Thank you, Laska here. I'd like to welcome the Minister of the House. The issue I raised today is in relation to the closing of the court services and the court houses in Kenmare, Carsaveen, Cloughlin and Dingle by the court services, and the excuse being given by the court services, this is a cost-saving measure. And I'm afraid that they have not done a comprehensive analysis on the actual costing to the state of this move. What they have not done is they've not looked at how much it's going to cost the state in terms of man hours, where Gardaí, which would normally give evidence in Kenmare, Carsaveen, Cloughlin or Dingle, are now going to have to travel to Killarney. They're going to have to wait in Killarney for their court case to be heard. Expert witnesses such as medical practitioners and others will have to make the same journey, and will have, as will witnesses. So what we're looking at here is an ineffective impact assessment by the court services. What they're just looking at really is the cost of the court building itself. What they're not looking at is the cost to the state of all these witnesses and the Garda time involved in now giving evidence in a centralised location, in this case in Killarney. What is not being looked at either was the increase in cost to the citizens of the area of South Kerry, where they themselves now are going to have to travel. And it is shown in the Crowley report in 2006 that 12% of the population in South Kerry don't have a motor vehicle. So what they would be relying on then to get justice would have to be to travel to Killarney. 2006, a 2006 report, 12%. And as you can imagine, in the economic downturn, that figure hasn't improved. And what we're looking at now is that they would have to go off and they'd have to get buses to Killarney. And as the Minister would be aware, those bus timetables don't always coincide with court sittings, and certainly return journeys can be quite early and would not coincide with somebody's hearing if it was late into the afternoon. And the access to justice is a fundamental right laid down in our Constitution, and what we would see is the most vulnerable, those who are seeking barring orders, those who are elderly, and those who are the poorest in our society, looking for access to justice. Up till now we're getting it locally, and as a result of this bizarre move, and I say it's a bizarre move because you would think that the department would have done a comprehensive review and say, well, if we do this, how much Garda hours are going to be taken up just travelling from Dingle to Killarney or to Tralee? That's 2 man hours just in travel alone. The same with Carsaveen. And what is the cost to the state of paying for the Gardaí to travel by squad car over to Killarney for the court hearing, for the witnesses, for the citizens themselves? So I'd ask the Minister to look at the issue again, because what we are seeing is a centralisation, as he's well aware from his own constituency in relation to Garda stations. We are seeing justice being removed from the people at a local level, and we are seeing it being transferred into the centre, where not only is the state at a financial loss, but also the citizens themselves are going to find themselves at a loss because their access to justice is being literally put beyond their reach. Thank you, Laska.
Thank you, Senator. Minister.
Can I preface my remarks by saying that I know my good neighbours in Kerry to be a neighbourly and affable bunch, and one would never be stuck for a lift anywhere to any part of the county at any given time.
Well, Minister, if I ever need a lift, I'll make sure to give you a call.
But let me say that the Minister for Justice, Equality and Defence, Minister Shatter, is unable to be here today and has asked me to convey his thanks to the Senator for raising this matter. However, as the Senator may be aware, under the provisions of the Court Service Act 1998, management of the courts is the responsibility of the Court Service. The 98 Act provides that the Court Service is independent in the performance of its functions, which of course include the provision, maintenance and management of court buildings. Decisions about court venues are entirely a matter for the Court Service Board, and the Minister has no role in the decision. In the current financial climate, the service has been obliged to review all aspects of its organisational and operational structures throughout the country, with the specific objective of ensuring that it can continue to maintain the delivery of frontline court services and an appropriate level of services to court users. The Minister has been informed that no court venue has been singled out or indeed exempted from the review process. A comprehensive review of all venues throughout the country has recently been completed. The purpose of the review was to establish a general framework within which venues could be considered for closure, taking into account a range of criteria such as caseload, proximity to an alternative venue, physical condition of the building, availability of holding cell facilities, etc. The likely impact on other justice agencies, such as An Garda Síochána and the Irish Prison Service, was also taken into account. The Minister is informed that the review identified a range of venues nationwide which, based on the criteria applied, could be considered for closure subject to a detailed assessment and the preparation of a business case in respect of each identified venue. It is worth noting that since its establishment in 1999, the court service has amalgamated nearly 160 venues, while at the same time the service has benefited from a very substantial capital investment to upgrade court accommodation around the country. The policy has been very successful, resulting in a more efficient use of time for the judiciary, court users and Gardaí. Rather than short sittings in smaller venues, a full day's list can be dealt with, which leads to reductions in delays in the district court. The Senator has inquired in particular about courthouses in the county of Kerry. The court services has informed me that Kenmare, Cahersiveen, Killorglin and Dingle have been identified as venues to be considered for closure, subject to a detailed assessment and the preparation of a business case as mentioned earlier. Standard courthouse requirements include basic facilities such as consultation rooms, victim support facilities and holding cells for prisoners, which are essential to ensure public safety and efficient use of Irish Prison Service resources. The Senator should note that the service has advised that the identification of venues as part of the review process does not necessarily mean that the identified venues will close, as each identified venue will be subject to a rigorous examination. I can confirm that the Court Service Board will take no decision on the future of Kenmare, Cahersiveen, Killorglin and Dingle as district court venues without full prior consultation with local interested parties and court users. The Minister was advised that the consultation process in relation to the identified venues is underway. Submissions were sought from a range of local interests and the closing date for receipt of submissions was the 25th of September 2013. The Court Service has indicated that it has met with local interested parties and the Service has assured the Minister that the views expressed in the consultation process will be taken into account in the decision-making process. As I already mentioned, the final decision in relation to the closure of any venue is a matter for the Board of the Courts Service. I want to thank the Senator for raising the matter and I appreciate his interest in the administration of justice in the county of Kerry. I know that the Senator will understand the need for the Court Service to take the necessary measures to promote greater efficiency in the courts, and I hope the constructive engagement involving the Court Service will result in reasoned and appropriate decisions being made on the venues concerned.
Thank you, Minister. Senator, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, and glad the Minister is offering to give lifts to the people in Kerry if he ever happens to be passing through. I note the response in relation to the criteria being laid down by the court services, and what that is basically saying that things such as holding cells, victim support facilities and consultation rooms, that if they're not there, then they're obviously going to be more likely to close. They haven't been there for 90 years in some places. We went through the emergency, we went through the Civil War, and they didn't have those facilities. And now the criteria are designed, as the Minister knows, by civil servants in order to justify the closure and say, well, you didn't have the Rolls-Royce version. It's been functioning perfectly for over 90 years, but now we're going to use it as an excuse to close it down. And I obviously don't blame the Minister in relation to this, but like I'd like to...
You a question for the Minister now?
Yeah, I mean, what this is about is access to justice for the elderly, the sick and the infirm and those living alone. And according to the report, 3,000 households in Kerry don't have access to a motor vehicle. People who write these submissions, Minister, I'd like to ask you to respond to this, is that they don't realise how difficult, as you and I realise, how difficult it is to actually just get from one town to another if you don't have use of a car. And I think when they're talking about the criteria,
Senator, you really have to conclude. It's only to be a brief statement now, Senator.
That the overall cost in terms of man hours and time used by the Gardaí and other professionals has not been taken into account, and in fact there are no savings. It's just more man hours being tied up sitting in courts far away from their own barracks. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Senator. Minister, you wish to respond?
I acknowledge the statement of the Senator, and I suppose we should, if we are to make statements in a public forum such as this, we should maybe try to extrapolate a little bit more from the data. The data is going back to 2006. 3,000 houses don't have access to a motor vehicle. You would have to extrapolate from that the number of people who will present before the justice system. And I think it would be fair to say that would be a minuscule figure, but that if they did have to present to a venue which is a little bit further away, again, to reiterate the earlier point that I made, I'm sure that their access to justice wouldn't be prevented in any way, and I'm sure that the neighbourly people of Kerry, would facilitate them in any way that they can. But I think it's, as I've already said, the court service operates independently and it makes independent decisions, and there is no doubt but that the court service as outlined by Senator Daly have been identified as venues which should be considered, but subject to a detailed assessment and the preparation of a business case. So I think the response that I'm giving via or through the Minister or from the Minister for Justice is fairly clear in that sense.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Mr. House.